Hey, what's up, everybody? So, out of curiosity, I was looking up stuff on YouTube, just, Looney Tunes related stuff, like with, everybody's favorite Wile E. Coyote versus, certain obstacles like gravity, boulders, every fail and all that. And one of the things that came up, believe it or not, was basically from Loonatics Unleashed. And it was basically Tech Coyote paid homage to essentially Wile E with the whole falling off the cliff, into the ground trope, gag, if you will. And it got me to want to look up some lunatics and everything on YouTube, like any moments and stuff. And lo and behold, I got some moments and everything from some of the characters. And it got me thinking, not everybody talks about lunatics. And I think I've talked about it prior, a long time ago here on this channel, but nobody's really talked about it, that much. I mean, there are people that do, mention about it and, kind of, do little segments of, hey, remember this, remember that, or WTF, what was this? And usually they'll use those segments to talk about obscure shows, or shows that have been on but didn't really last as long as initially intended to. And Lunatics is one of those shows that falls into that category. It falls into that category. I was just organizing something there on my desk there, but it falls in that category of one of the shows that had potential to be good, but unfortunately did something that it shouldn't have, and that's damaged the reputation of Looney Tunes for at least 4 years, after it, the final season aired, which was the second season. But still today, believe it or not, it has a cult following, and it still gets referenced and acknowledged. In fact, in one of the recent seasons of the new Animaniacs reboot, continuation show on Hulu, you had several characters make appearances there. So it still gets recognized, still gets talked about, and all that. When needed, or when they feel like they want to at least, dig into the obscure lore of Looney Tunes cartoon treasures that they try to keep away from the public eye. Now, to me, when I first saw Loonatics Unleashed, when I first heard it being advertised and everything, I was like, oh, this looks really good, because like anybody, I was a fan of Looney Tunes, growing up. I was a fan of them and all that. So to see this get promoted and talked about, about a year or so prior to its debut, and the fact that it was getting pumped up by, Warner Brothers and those behind it, and you had fans like me, getting excited about it, because this was basically a different take on Looney Tunes, because the premise was this took place in the future, like 2772 AD, and it basically involved a group of descendants of the Looney Tunes themselves, the primary, more popular ones. When it came to the whole Looney Tunes trope, but the whole roster of that basically existed at that time, of the more popular, well-renowned ones that fans gravitated towards more than anything, that fans enjoyed watching more than anything. And true, they had, unique characterizations of different Looney Tune characters as well. Some of them, being looked at as villains and everything. And I remember, though, just hearing about this happening, getting excited about it like everybody else. And the day it debuted, I watched it just like everyone else did on a Saturday morning on WB. And believe it or not, I was instantly hooked. I mean, all the hype, I should say, that was behind it, it not only did it live up to that hype, but, obviously it was enough to warrant a second season. It's like the moment they probably tested this with test audiences, the initial season or initial first couple of episodes, I think WB realized that they had a hit on their hands at that time. So basically they said, okay, let's do more seasons, and we had at least one season afterwards that followed. Now, the premise of the show is, like I said, you had this group of descendants of the more popular, well-renowned Looney Tune characters as the Loonatics, and they were brought together by this alien woman named Zadavia. And for most of the season, the first season anyway, we only saw her in holographic projections and everything. We never saw her like physically in person until the end of the first season in the two-parter Acmegeddon. Yeah, that's what it was called. It was called Acmegeddon. Acmegeddon. Kind of Armageddon, but Acmegeddon. So we never really saw her until the end and everything. And just like all the other characters, and just like the Looney Tune characters, I should say, or lunatic characters, I should say, at that moment when she finally revealed herself in person, it was like, holy smokes, this is a good-looking character, very unique style and and everything, design, and it was like, okay, business is picked up because now she's here in the moment. She's really here in the moment, and yeah, she would play a role, an integral role, more so in the second season than in the first. Basically, she was more active with the team in the second season, doing certain stories and episodes and everything, than the previous season, because now we get to know who she is. I mean, she was even in person with them when she would basically tell them about what missions they would go on. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this show on both seasons' accounts. Yeah, the second season was more, as people put it, more lighthearted than anything, and showcased a lot more, I guess you could say, descendants or different characterizations of Looney Tune characters in the future. Like you had a characterization of Foghorn Leghorn, but he was human. A characterization of, Pepe Le Pew, except, he was human and such. And of course you had a descendant of Sylvester, who's called, I think, Sylvester or something. Then you had a Marvin Martian descendant, Royal Treatums, who was a descendant of Tweety, and so on. You had all these, like different characterizations of, established Looney Tune characters, but, as descendants in the future, under different names, under different personas. And like I said, when we got to the second season, because the first season, pretty much, it had comedy in it. It had some Looney Tune-esque like moments, but not many. It was basically played more straightforward and serious. But as soon as we got to the second season, that's when, like I mentioned, it got more lighthearted, more comedic. Basically favored itself more towards showcasing the Looney Tune style, like of gags and comedy. Like I mentioned, with the whole Tech Coyote paying homage to Wile E. Coyote deal. So yeah, you got more, you got the show leaning more towards that and everything. And in my opinion, I know people say, and I know sources and people say otherwise, but in my opinion, I think maybe it's because it went in that lighthearted tone direction, that more Looney Tune favorite direction for season 2, that it unfortunately didn't get another season, because it started to be more comedic, more lighthearted, more silly at times, and I believe because of that, it really threw people off, because it was so different. It was so different from the previous season, which again, like I said, played itself a little bit more serious and a little bit more straight, a little darker at times. So I think that's what kind of, inevitably caused it to lose its audience. Because I'm sure when they tested the second season, it's like, okay, we're committed to do this season, we got to put it out there anyway. I'm pretty sure when they saw the test audience's reaction to it, which pretty much, in my opinion, was probably the same reaction a lot of fans had, a lot of viewers had, and that was, what is this? Why is this more comedic than the previous season? Yeah, I think they pretty much knew that, they weren't going to be able to continue it after that, and it would be a while after Loonatics Unleashed that we'd get any other Looney Tunes, like, I guess you could say, programming, reboots or anything, afterwards. And it would be up until about 4 years later, I believe. I think 4 years later, that we would essentially get a reboot, in a sense, with the Looney Tunes show, because according to a lot of rumors and and all that, the fact that the show, you know, basically had a downfall, you know, in viewership and everything. And again, like I said, my thought is because of the change in tone, you know, basically, which caused that to happen. You know, it basically made WB like, okay, maybe we need to halt, maybe, you know, keep our distance on the Looney Tunes right now, give them a break, and then come back and revisit them when the time is right. Because I think when they were developing Loonatics Unleashed, they had just released in theaters Looney Tunes Back in Action, which is an underrated a live-action animated Looney Tunes film with Brendan Fraser in there, the Academy Award-winning Brendan Fraser, by the way, as of last night. So, you know, so to me, it was like, because they were, you know, oversaturating the market, I think, with Looney Tunes, and Looney Tune inspired, like, shows, programs, games, and stuff like that, they decided, okay, let's take a break, and then come back and revisit the Looney Tunes later at the appropriate time. And after Loonatics Unleashed, they took that hiatus for about 4 years, and the next thing that came out was the Looney Tunes show, which proved to be a huge hit. A big hit, and, you know, the rest pretty much is history. But to me, when I look at Loonatics Unleashed, I should say, when I take a look at Loonatics Unleashed, I look at a show that, you know, despite its change in tone for the second season, you know, was not really given a true chance to shine. I mean, nowadays, you know, you see a lot of, you know, shows even back in the early to mid 2000s getting retcon, rebooted, you know, brought back for a second chance and everything. And I look at a show like Loonatics Unleashed here, and I'm like, this is a show that really could have, you know, really could have, if not still could, what I'm trying to say, benefit from a new, you know, from a potential retcon or a reboot or even maybe a continuation, because there's a lot of potential in it. And again, like I said, I think it's mainly because of the fact that, you know, the tone shifted into a more lighthearted tone, that it really threw a lot of fans off, because let's be honest, the more serious, straight edge, straightforward, I should say, the more serious, straightforward, darker tone, you know, more mature tone, is what was really popular, you know, back then and even now, when it comes to like interpretations like Loonatics Unleashed being showcased to a lot of folks. So, to me, I think because of that sudden shift, where you saw more of that favoritism, you know, and reliance on the Looney Tune-like slapstick and such, and the more of the lightheartedness, I believe, honestly, even with test audiences, you know, it basically, you know, caused this show to fail. I don't think the viewership numbers or the rating numbers at the time is the reason. I think it's just the, you know, the criticism of, hey, why did you go this route and not stick with what brought it to the dance, what got people excited. So, to me though, in the end, I'm always going to be a fan of Loonatics Unleashed. I love the unique take on the Looney Tunes, and these being descendants of theirs, essentially, you know, taking place centuries in the future, like 7 centuries in the future. You know, I enjoyed that take. I liked the stories, I really did. And again, I think it's one of those shows that, you know, really deserves a second chance. I really do. I think, you know, under the right circumstances, like nowadays is the right circumstance in my opinion. I think under the right circumstances and under the right, you know, people, it could, you know, a comeback for the show or a retcon of the show could really help out and maybe get people to, you know, look into this show and see exactly why, you know, at first, you know, it was such beloved, you know, hyped up show that people looked forward to when it debuted and enjoyed, and why even after, you know, its dismissal, I think around 2007, why some people now view it as a cult classic and an underrated cult classic, in my opinion. But really, I think it does deserve a second opportunity, and hopefully those at Warner Brothers Discovery, you know, look at, you know, Loonatics Unleashed, those at the Looney Tunes division, Warner Brothers Cartoon division, hopefully they look at the property of Loonatics Unleashed and be like, hey, let's give that a second chance, but let's correct course from what happened previously and stick with what brought it to the dance, what got people excited initially when it first came out. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. What were your thoughts on Loonatics Unleashed when you first heard it was going to be a series back in the early to mid 2000s? How did you feel about it? What were your thoughts on the first season, compared to the second season? Do you think the second season taking on that lighter tone is what caused it to fail? What are your thoughts? Let me know down below in the comment section as well as in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video. You will get an audio podcast version of this at BW Rosas Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. You will also get, you will not get, but you can also support me at patreon.com/BW Rosas at the $1, $3 tier. Also support me at Venmo at Brian-Walmer-2. That's Brian-Walmer-2. Also at Cash App at BW Rosas 98. Also support me at VENMO at BW Rosas for content you can't get anywhere else, especially here on YouTube, and especially with some of the content I just uploaded recently. And also check me out at divanaut.com/BVW1979 and click on the upper left hand corner here at the end screen to check out my Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are on Loonatics Unleashed. How did you feel about it when you first saw it? Do you think it gets a bad rep? And do you think it should get a second chance, as a retconned series, a continuation? Give me your thoughts. Let me know down below and in the live chat. And until next time, I am out.